And on 5 Live, we get the first word from the Chief of the Army Staff, General Manoj Mukund Naravane, on the drone strike at the Jammu Air Base and drone sightings in and around Jammu. 7 of these drones were spotted in the last 4 days. General Naravane is confident the forces are preparing to deal with this new age conflict threat. He went on to say that India is factoring in both offensive and defensive use of drones and drone technology to boost its counter drone strike mechanism. Let's listen in. General, we have a very strong counter-terrorism grid in Jammu and Kashmir, but is this nature of warfare changing in terms of, so yes, as you've explained, we have multi-tiered grid in Jammu and Kashmir. They may be able to stop terrorists. How will they stop drones? How do we counter the threat of unmanned aerial vehicles in the hands of either state, non-state or state-supported non-state elements in this hybrid or grey zone warfare?
Well, the easy ability of drones, and in fact, you can even make it at home as a do-it-yourself project, definitely increases the complexity and the challenges that we have to deal with. We are seized of this problem, and we have put in place certain measures. I would not like to elaborate too much on all of them for obvious reasons, but all our troops on ground have been sensitized to this evolving threat, and we are developing capabilities to deal with that, whether by state-sponsored or by states themselves. We are developing the capabilities to deal with them, with this drone threat, both in the kinetic and in the non-kinetic realm. So I think this is a continuous battle. Over the centuries, this has always been the case. Capability is developed, another capability is developed to counter it. Then another capability goes further up. So this seesaw battles between drones and counter-drone technologies will continue. And this is how the character will keep changing, and we will have to keep adapting to this if we have to succeed.
General, you've been quoting General Julia Duhe speaking of victory, smiling on those who anticipate changes in the character of war. Is the use of drones in this hybrid war that change in the character of war? Did we anticipate it, General, or are we now trying to adapt?
Well, as you quite rightly mentioned, that the character of warfare has been changing continuously, and the advent of drones and counter-drone systems has radically altered the way we think and how we will be having to fight in the future. With their ease of availability, drones can be easily accessed and can be used by both state and non-state actors. So we will also have to factor this in as we go along and make our plans. But I would like to assure you that we are fully seized of this issue, and we are working towards making sure that we are not found wanting in this regard.
Like the terror attack that took place at the Jammu Air Base, can we prevent the next terror strike?
Drones will be increasingly used in all sorts of combat in the future, both by state and non-state actors. And we will have to factor this in all our future planning that we do. And as I mentioned in my address, we are catering for both the offensive and use of drones, as also focusing on the defensive measures or the counter-drone systems or measures that we need to adopt to prevent any attacks on our critical facilities by drones and their use whether by state or non-state actors.
So after at least 7 drone sightings in the past 4 days, an anti-drone system has now been installed at the Indian Air Force base at Jammu. The National Investigation Agency probing the drone strike has intensified its investigations. It will be recording the statement, incidentally, of 2 security personnel who claimed they saw the drone coming in, drop the explosives and leave.
Four days, 7 drones. The threat is real and escalating. The Indian security grid is on its toes ever since suspected Pakistan-sponsored terrorist in Jammu turned to high-tech terror. After mini drones dropped explosives targeting an Indian Air Force base in Jammu and many similar attempts over the last few days, the counter plan to deal with the threat is ready. Sources say an anti-drone system has been deployed by the National Security Guard at the Air Force Station in Jammu. This includes both offensive and defensive mechanism. The forces will use electro-optic system for high-tech surveillance. The forces have also deployed radio frequency detector, soft jammers and anti-drone guns to neutralize any future threat. Meanwhile, the NIA, which is probing Jammu drone attacks, will record statements of 2 jawans, an airman and a Defence Security Corps sentry, who claim to have seen the drones that dropped explosives on the airbase in Jammu. Sources say the drones used in the attack by terrorists are small quadcopters, and it is possible they took off from close proximity of the airbase. With drone terror threat escalating and emerging as a big challenge, the security agencies are leaving no stone unturned to secure the country's big cities and primary security and civil installations. As Independence Day approaches, the anti-drone system developed by DRDO has been deployed near Red Fort. The system can detect and jam micro-drones up to 3 kilometers. This shield system uses laser to bring down a target. Over the past few years, terrorists in Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan have been using mini drones for terror, but India was immune to it so far. Now that the threat is finally here, the security establishment is acting swiftly to neutralize any attack from the skies. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, General Naravane also spoke about the situation in Jammu and in Kashmir, and he said there is tremendous improvement after the ceasefire agreement. Now, before I come to General Naravane once again, I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Sunilji Bhatt joining us live from Jammu on the latest in investigations. Sunilji, the NIA team on Ground Zero was recording statement of 2 Indian Air Force and security personnel. What details do we have about the nature of the strike, where the drones came from and the current security measures in place?
Well, Gaurav, as far as investigation is concerned, the investigations have been intensified. We know that the Ministry of Home Affairs has handed over the investigation to the NIA, but other agencies are also probing this entire matter simultaneously, whether it's the Jammu and Kashmir Police or the Indian Air Force or the Indian Army. Every agency is on its job, but what we are learning is that it seems that the drone may have been launched somewhere near the Air Force station only, and that is why now Jammu Police has also intensified the door-to-door verification drive, which is launched yesterday. Jammu Police personnel are going to the residential areas which are located near the Air Force station. They are collecting details from the people there. They are asking details about the tenants who are living on those residential houses. And these details are being also shared with the NIA. So we can see that given the seriousness of this matter, each and every aspect is being investigated, and those two personnel who claim to have seen those two drones are also being questioned. They are also being investigated. The entire matter is being investigated. So you can see, Gaurav, that it's a very serious matter, and that is why we see that although the probe has been handed over to the NIA, but still you have intelligence officials, Jammu and Kashmir police, military intelligence officials, they all are
Okay.
collecting evidence, and this evidence is being shared with the NIA so that they can get they can get to the bottom of this entire conspiracy.
Keep tracking that story, Sunil ji. I will come back to you for more. For the moment, many thanks for joining me. But what's the overall situation, not just along the line of control between India and Pakistan in Jammu and Kashmir, but also in the hinterland or in depth areas, in urban built-up areas? Is there a rise in terror? Is there a drop in terror? I put some of these questions to General Manoj Mukund Naravane, Chief of the Army Staff. Let's listen in. So, will the US draw down in Afghanistan? Are we looking at a spike in tensions along the line of control or in the hinterland in coming months? And in your appreciation, terrorists using drones, does this mark a shift in tactics being used against India?
Well, over the past few months, in fact, ever since the ceasefire understanding between the DGMOs in February this year, the situation in J&K has seen a marked improvement, especially as far as terrorism is concerned. There has been little or no infiltration from across the LC, and the number of incidents, terror-related incidents in the valley have also seen a considerable decline. Of course, the odd incident of firing at some security force picket here and there, or the gunning down of some person in his village, these kind of incidents do continue, but overall, the sharp drop in all these parameters of violence have very clearly indicated that the Awam, the general population in Kashmir, is all for peace and development. And I think that going ahead, this is where we need to focus and make sure that we create the conditions which are conducive to peace and development.
Taliban in Pakistan, Pakistan state-sponsored terror. So you're saying there's a drop in terror. There is a drop in ceasefire violations that DGMO peace is holding. But then are drones then the new tactics that terrorists are adopting? Because here there is political activity and delimitation process that gets underway, General.
No, I'm sure that there would be some inimical elements and some elements who would not like peace to prevail in the valley. But what is very clear and what emerges is that post the ceasefire, all the parameters of violence have dropped. So there was definitely a linkage between the support that the terrorists got from across the border and the levels of violence in the Kashmir Valley. So that linkage is very well established, and consequent to the ceasefire, since there is a ceasefire, there's no longer any infiltration. Since there is no infiltration, the number of terrorists in the valley are lesser. Since the number of terrorists are lesser, the number of terrorist-related incidents are also seen a drop. So this is a very clear chain which is established of cause and effect. So, but as I mentioned earlier, there will always be elements who will try to sabotage the process of peace and development, but we will have to cater for that. And we, I think, have a very strong counter-terrorist and counter-infiltration grid in J&K, and our operations to that end to ensure peace and tranquility will continue.
And I want to quickly bring in India Today's Ashraf Vani, our man on ground in the valley, for more on the story. Ashraf, the army chief says, ever since the DGMO dialogue, peace is holding, not just at the line of control, but also a marked decline in terror cases. And not firing, shooting or targeting of police personnel, but overall a big decline in terror. What explains this? Does this actually mean that Pakistan controls the terror tap?
Absolutely, Gaurav. Basically, one of the indicators which clearly mentions that there is some less role of foreign militants in the Kashmir Valley and infiltration is at its low is that during the 2021, means this year, in the initial 6 months, only 3 foreign militants had been killed in the Kashmir Valley, and 2 of them in Sopore and 1 recently here in the Srinagar. So that means the number of killed militants is more locals as compared to the Pakistanis, what was earlier trend that mostly the militants killed in different operations by the security forces were the foreigners. So there is some decline in the infiltration as well as the peace on the line of control. We are not seeing the ceasefire violations which were the daily routine in the Kashmir Valley, particularly in the North Kashmir, in the Uri sector, Masil sector, Gurez sector. That means the talks between the DMOs of 2 countries, Pakistan and India, has so far been seen its effectiveness on the line of control, and also its impact is visible in the valley too.
Does this lead to an improvement in situation when it comes to resumption of political activity, the activities of the Delimitation Commission, the interaction with political leaders? What's the situation on ground in Srinagar, for example?
So far, the situation is not so much good as it might have been seen as per the commitments of the government. But the main reason for that is that the internal political issue. You have seen the meetings of the political parties in Delhi with the Prime Minister. All parties in single voice said that there should be the statehood in the Jammu and Kashmir, there should be the restoration of peace, and also that kind of thing that shows some kind of stability. As far as the terrorism is concerned, most of the experts believe here in the valley, in Kashmir Valley, that if some engagements are going to be held with the Pakistan as well as with the local political parties, there will be the stability in the situation in the Kashmir Valley, as well as the terror-related incidents will come to the decline.
Ashraf, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Now, Chief of the Army Staff also made a big statement on the situation at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Speaking exclusively to India Today, the Army Chief said that the situation along the LAC is normal after disengagement that had been carried out on the north and south bank of Pangong Tso, but both India and China remain engaged on other friction points. Let's listen in. General, if I may shift to the situation along the line of actual control, what's the current situation at the LAC and especially at the friction points, and in your appreciation, sir, the road ahead?
Well, the situation on the LAC has been normal for quite some time now, ever since the disengagement took place again, which had happened in February this year, from the northern and southern banks of the Pangong Tso as well as the Kailash ranges. And since then, both sides have strictly adhered in letter and spirit to the disengagement that was agreed upon. We are engaging with the Chinese at various levels, at the political level, at the diplomatic level, and of course at the military level, and in the military level also at different levels, whether it be the senior highest military commander down to the delegation leader. So this talk between us is going on, and this has helped build trust between the two sides. And going ahead, we are sure that we will be able to resolve all the remaining issues.
I want to bring in India Today's editor defense, Abhishek Bhalla, for more on this. Abhishek, along the line of actual control, especially when it comes to friction points at Gogra, at Hot Spring, at Depsang, what is the situation after the last round of Corps Commanders talks? Because we were also told that the Chinese seem to want to scale it down to the level of Div commanders or major generals and not Corps commanders as lieutenant generals. And India is very keen that de-escalation, disengagement and then de-induction happens. On ground, we hear of China actually building up.
Gaurav, what is important to understand is that since that initial disengagement that took place at Pangong Lake, things have been calm. There has been no untoward incident, no clashes or the troops coming face to face. But the build-up certainly remains exactly in the same manner as it was a year back. The enhanced troop deployment from both sides has also not been reduced. But there is one key takeaway from what the Army Chief told to you in that interview. He said that through the dialogue that is continuing at the military level, both at the top commanders level as well as at the junior officers level, it has helped them build trust. Now, this is something very important because over the last 1 year, what has happened is that there has been a major trust deficit between the two militaries, even though they have been constantly speaking. So for the chief to say that there has been some restoration of trust is something which is very significant. But what is important to note is that India has been sticking to its demand of restoration of status quo ante as of April 2020. That still doesn't seem to be taking place because the Chinese continue to be extremely rigid and stubborn when it comes to other friction points whenever there is a military dialogue.
Oh, absolutely. Also, a buffer zone at areas where both may have disengaged. Now, China's always been keen on a buffer zone. India wants to ensure that we're able to patrol till the patrol points. When will that happen? We'll track that story very closely. Abhishek Bhalla, for the moment, many thanks for